go over the U.S. weapons here real quick. The most common weapon by 1967 is the M16A1 rifle. This was developed based on two technologies. At the end of World War II, at the end of the war, all armies studied what did we just do, what went right, what went wrong, what can we improve. Because it may have worked, but maybe there's a better way. One of the ideas that came out of the war is they noticed most of the ammunition expended by a rifleman was not aimed to hit an enemy soldier. It was aimed to make him put his head down and move out of the area, suppress him. Well, a 30 caliber round makes the same amount of noise as a 22 caliber round. What happens if you make that 22 caliber round higher velocity? Your M1 rifle in World War II is about 2,700 feet per second on a 30 caliber bullet. This weapon is over 3,200 feet per second on an essential 22 caliber round. A lot higher, a lot bigger round than what you fire out of a 22 rifle. 55 grains versus about 22 grains on the standard 22. The little long rifles.
36 to 40.
36 to 40. But they're only doing about 2,500 feet per second. So this thing is a very loud crack to it. And since its suppression is based on noise, this will have a greater suppressive fire effect. But the design of the weapon is almost a story unto itself, despite the ammunition. When the U.S. Army finished the trials that accepted the M14 rifle, which is an M1 rifle with a 20-round magazine for all practical purposes, Mr. Eugene Stoner showed up and said, "I've got a new rifle, I'd like to enter the competition." Well, he was about 2 days too late. But the Army and the Air Force were so intrigued by his design, they said, "We've got a project we'd like you to take on." So they asked him to redesign the rifle to shoot this new, small, high-velocity ammunition. It was 223 or 5.56 millimeter. The first several hundred that they bought were actually given to the South Vietnamese Army in 1962 or 1963. And the troops loved them. They worked without a flaw, and they're very lightweight. And again, remember, your average South Vietnamese is only about getting tall, 100, 110 pounds. 110 usually gets on the heavy side. So a very light recoil weapon, and this thing with a 20-round magazine is 7.25 pounds, if I remember right. So it's very lightweight. The gun has very little recoil. It does not have the violent kick, the AK-47, which fires a much heavier round at lower velocity. So as I'm firing this, there's still going to be a pull, but if you've got it seated right, it's very easy to control. And again, you have a selective fire switch on here. I can shoot semi-automatic or full automatic. So the U.S. Army and the Air Force decided, well, we like this thing better than the M2 carbines and the M1s they were issuing their air police. They want to buy 100,000 of them. Well, Mr. McNamara, and I won't go into history on him, decided, wait a minute, if one branch of the military is going to use it, we're all going to use it, which is just common sense. Why have 3 sets of rifles with 3 old different sets of repair parts and 2 different types of ammunition? That makes no sense whatsoever. So the Army, after some arm twisting, decided, okay, we'll use them too. That's where there's a neat twist in the story. If anybody's ever had anything to do with the military, you know there's the right way, the wrong way, and the Army way. I can see you know what I'm referring to. Some pencil pusher in the Pentagon took a look at the production contracts. Well, the ammunition is made by a company different than the rifles. Armalite Corporation and Colt were the original manufacturers. I don't think any Armalites actually went to it. I think they're all Colt. I think the early productions were Armalites and went to the South Vietnamese. Colt was contracted to go with the rifle. The ammunition is made by a company called IMR. Well, IMR had developed a special powder for that 5.56 that burned extremely clean, left virtually no residue in the weapon. One of the goals was to produce ammunition that did not foul the weapon. That's expensive. So the guy who knows it all signing contracts at Pentagon level, we don't want to use that expensive powder. We have all this tons of 30 caliber ball powder, I think it's called M2, laying around. We want you to load the cartridges with those. Except it burned here. So they issued the weapons, and suddenly, because there were no cleaning kits issued with it, because the trials in South Vietnam had showed you don't need cleaning kits. The weapons function fine. Wipe them down, and that was it. They changed over, and they suddenly had nothing but problem after problem after problem. Now, at this time, keep in mind, the guys in the field have no idea what's going on. All they know is they were told, this is the cat's meow, here's your new rifle, here's the new ammunition. By the way, Mattel did make one of these because I personally saw one in basic training. They did not make the whole weapon. They made the stocks. and there was a metal mark on it. We're all standing there looking at us. Somebody said this didn't show me. There's the mark right in front of me. They didn't do a lot of it. And the Army, after a while, said, we're going to stop that for obvious reasons. Start having all these problems, and of course, there are several instances of us GIs being killed because of weapons were jammed. The powder had built up, the rounds would not seat. They didn't know why, and instead of grabbing a handful of these weapons in battlefield condition, sealing them in plastic, and shipping them all for evaluation, they just started issuing cleaning kits and telling the guys how to clean the weapons properly. Well, that didn't totally solve the problem. And it was late 69 or early 70, somewhere there, before they figured out what had happened. Well, by then, it had developed a pretty bad reputation. But the problems pretty much got solved. Because of that, one of the things they did is they added this little forward. Oh, yours doesn't have it. No, this is an original M16. This has got it on it, doesn't it?
Nope, that isn't it. That's an S16.
All right, that's the short one.
They're both slick sides.
This is an M16. The A1s right here have a handle sticking out at an angle. It's called a forward assist. The side of the bolt has ridges cut in it. So the bolt doesn't go all the way forward. You can hit that handle, and it's spring-loaded, and it'll catch each one of those little ribs and push the bolt in the battery. And they switched the flash. I should have looked at it. The flash hider was changed from this open prong, which the jungle vines love to get into, and then you have to rip the vine out. They put a ring around the top, and they call them birdcage flash hiders.
It's like this one on this one.
Okay, you got the
bird cage right here.
They switched over to this style.
That style, yeah.
It kept the vines from getting on the inside. And this was originally supposed to be able to use as a grenade launcher too, but the tapering on there caused them problems. This type, they went to a straight and they eliminated the problems. But 40 millimeter M79 pretty much eliminated all 40 millimeters. Now this particular one here, this was a cut down version, originally made for air crews on helicopters. But a lot of armored vehicle crews, tank crews, and the ACAS, the 113s with cupola armor on top, carried a lot of these too. Tank crews probably more than the ACAS because it's so short. Getting in and out of the tank, you do not want something very long. You can't get in and out of the hatchet quick. And these were light if they could you get a hold of them. But not a lot of them made. And I don't even know if they all actually made it over there. It's called the XM177. It was never actually type classified as an M number. They were considered prototype pieces.
Well, now, a lot of these special forces use
those guys carried whatever they wanted. That's a whole different breed into themselves.
A lot of times your officer, just your infantry carried those, your officers would. They carried some of them. Not a lot of them.
I would say they weren't real common.
Most of them carried this.
I didn't even get in the special forces guy.
Usually they have shorter barrels.
Because of the selective fire switch and the fact that we started using these weapons after we were already engaged in combat, they didn't have the time to actually train the troops on how to properly use the weapons. Because prior to this, all your rifles were semi-automatic only. You followed the trigger and it fired one round. The M14s, you had two guys within a rifle squad, and they were called automatic rifles. They had a selective fire switch backed by the trigger, but that's only two guys. And an M14 on fully automatic, even with the bipod and the front grip, is something to try and hold on to. It's a fucking rock. You're not going to get accurate fire. With these, you can fire full automatic, and there's no serious jump. You're still going to put a few of them up into the right of the target, but it's a much easier weapon to control. The guys, a lot of times, would leave it on full auto. And for the initial engagement, when you make first contact, that's not a bad idea. But you need to slow down.
Break the rifle down short with the buffer system.
Oh, okay.
That's what makes a rifle so efficient. It has a huge spring, and it has a counterweighted buffer in the back. It's about that long. And they're both recycled.
It's dead. There it is.
There you go. That's right back in the stock. The bolt, cycle back against that. And when that bolt goes in and turns, it has to turn and lock each time it makes a cycle. There you go. Ain't been out there in a while.
Yeah.
It's dirty now.
This is what it's referring to here. This was the first U.S. weapon made with this. This is your spring, but this is your counterweight. And that helps absorb the energy, because you've got a piece of metal moving at high velocity coming back. This was to help counter that. Oh, you got the bolt on it, good.
That's the bolt. That's what hits the buffer too. Back here. Like that. There you go.
Yeah. So as this moves back, it deadens the energy of the bolt. And it allows you to have a very fast, lightweight firing weapon without an extreme high rate of fire. These would cycle at about 700 rounds per minute for automatic, which means you got about a little less than 3 seconds of ammunition in the magazine. Which doesn't sound like much. 2.5 seconds in combat is an eternity.
Because these are 20-round magazines, which is issue 9, but they didn't load more than 18 rounds. Because if you put 20 in, you would get a jam sometimes. So they basically just had 18 rounds. But what they would do, they would take 2 of these and tape them together, and they'd have 36 rounds. They just flip it over and put it back in the mag.
That's it right there.
Here, look here.
Now, the issue on carrying enough ammunition for these weapons, the other reason to go to a smaller round is the human body can only carry so much weight. And the more you load a guy down, the slower he's going to move in combat. And if he's out busting the bush all day in the jungle and you're literally having to cut your way through, you're not going to cover as much distance over long periods of time, over days at a time, as you can with a lighter weight weapon. What they were doing is you only had 2 ammunition pouches which held 3 magazines each plus 1 in the weapon. So that's 7 magazines of 20 rounds, which is your big one. That's only 140 rounds of ammunition. Keep in mind, with 14 less rounds, you leave 2 out of your magazine. So what they would do is they'd take the bandoliers that were issued with spare ammunition, and they would get a hold of additional magazines. And the one guy I knew that was over there, he had 2 bandoliers of spare magazines. And you could still go through that in very short order, especially if the fighting got intense.
I've heard stories.
We were on fire bases. It was not uncommon for guys to have a box of loaded magazines next to them if they could arrange it, just because you went through them so fast. Because whoever's attacking you is limited in his ammo. He's only got 4 magazines per weapon. So he's got to conserve his ammunition. So if you're dug into a position and you can have additional loaded magazines, you have the edge. The other thing is even if you didn't have the extra mags, these are not live rounds. These are demonstration rounds. There's a little clip that fits on here that charge loaders. These things come loaded 10 to a little metal strip. You put that little charge loader on here, slide that in there, and you just push 10 rounds straight in. You take that one off, put the next one in, go down, and the last 2 out. Pop your charge loader off, put that back in your pocket of your speed loader. So you could reload the magazines relatively quickly, and there was no equivalent device at that time for the AK-47. Besides, they didn't have extra ammunition in the field.